All right, cool. So yeah, once again, welcome to Patch Chat Big Marsh. Like I said, this is a collaborative program between COS and Chicago Audubon Society. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Our focus today is going to be on Big Marsh Park on the southeast side of Chicago, a fantastic birding mecca here. But one of the reasons we picked this is we realized that, you know, while it certainly has quite the reputation, you know, not everybody's been there. It can be a little confusing about how to get there. It's such a big site. Where do you even go to get all the really fantastic birds that get reported from this park? And in general, you know, we realized that as we're all still trying our best to, you know, stay socially distant and, you know, recognize that sometimes going on field trips together is not the possibility for everybody, we want to make it as easy as possible for everyone in the city and beyond to access some of these amazing sites and understand and know how to bird them knowledgeably without necessarily having a guide the entire time. So, without further ado, we've assembled a fantastic group here of folks who know this park better than, frankly, anyone. So I just want to give a quick shout out here to Stephen Bell, who is the director of Big Marsh and many of the several surrounding Calumet area Chicago Park District parks. Walter Martzis, who is a longtime veteran birder of Big Marsh and many, again, of the Calumet area parks and has a wealth of knowledge on the history and current of birds that you can find there, as well as Ben Sarante, Stephanie Bilkey, and Carl Giametti, who are all currently vying for top e-birder at Big Marsh. It is an ongoing competition, so I certainly say that there is no clear victor at the current time, but, you know, they can argue that out here however they want. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our guest here who will talk to you guys about Big Marsh, what's going on there, and how best to get around there. So Stephen, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, excellent. So if I share my screen, Edward, do I need to get an invite from you or can I share my screen?
My bad, you should be able to you should be good now.
Okay, let's see. Can everybody see that? Are you seeing my screen yet? Is my screen showing up? Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Yep,
awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on Big Marsh and some of the other sites that are on the southeast side, and then I'll dive in a little bit deeper to some of the things that are happening right now, which will kind of set the stage for the other guests on the panel. So I think that most people are probably not aware that the southeast side of Chicago features the Park District's largest natural sites, and that they contain significant habitat that supports an impressive level of biodiversity right here in Chicago. Between 2002 and 2011, the Park District acquired several parcels of land from the city with the intention of improving ecological health, establishing native habitats, and opening these spaces to the public as parks. So the 6 sites that you see on the slide right here, USX and Steelworkers, Marion Burns, Big Marsh, Indian Ridge, and Hegwish, are considered, we call them, within the Park District, we call them natural areas and function similarly to public parks, but because they don't have amenities like bathrooms or water or field houses, these areas typically operate from dawn to dusk. So there's no light, so it's kind of harsh to go there after dark if you don't know your way around. All of them except USX have parking areas that are associated or adjacent to them. And the Park District's vision of Southeast Side natural sites, Big Marsh Park, with its central location and its infrastructure and the soon to open environmental center, is envisioned to act as a hub for educational programming, for restoration activities across the Southeast Side. And also, some of you may have heard this new term that we've been trying to coin. It's called eco-recreational, or eco-rec. So eco-recreational infrastructure for all of the other sites on the southeast side. At nearly, 300 acres, Big Marsh is the largest Park District natural site in the whole city. The park includes a mix of native wetland, prairie, and savanna, as well as 40 acres of bike-focused features that collectively make up the Big Marsh Bike Park. That includes a brand new asphalt pump track. Woohoo! That should be opening in the next couple of weeks, BMX jump lines, and several miles of single single track trails. I'm not really going to focus on bike related stuff on at this time, but I would like to say that it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to go out there and spend a few hours or spend the day, check out the bike, do some hiking, do some birding, and we just got a divvy station installed. So if you don't have a bike and you still want to come out and check things out, we've got divvy out there. And at this point, when I left on Friday, there were only e-bikes there. So you could come out and check things out, and you could be tooling around in style with a little tailwind to push you along on some of those trails. Um, this is just, I feel like people, I know a lot of people have been out to Big Marsh, but for the people that haven't been out there, I think it's important to recognize that that today the Chicago Park District and our partners are working to remediate and restore and revitalize the site, and that we're doing this by reintroducing native plants, controlling invasive species, removing debris, and manipulating water levels, in the hopes that Big Marsh and other Southeast sites will once again be embraced as assets for the local community in the Calumet region. So these are just some shots that actually came off of my phone from the past, except for those muskrats that came off of my phone in the past couple of years, and I think they do a pretty good job of summing up what a unique site Big Marsh is, both in terms of the landscape and the opportunities that it affords for people to visit and check things out. I do want to go back to this other slide real quick and just point out, here's my pointer here. So Big Marsh, if you're traveling to Big Marsh, you can see the little compass rose here in the corner. It is bordered, it is bordered on the east by the Acme Coke plant, on the north by Southern Railroad site, on the west by both the golf course and Lake Calumet, and then on the south side down here, whoops, sorry, my finger is like super sensitive here on this button. On the south side by the old Paxton, the former Paxton landfill. So all of those four sites seem like they're such important and iconic landmarks on the southeast side, and Big Marsh is kind of nestled in that little bowl between all four of them. There's South Stony Ave, Island Ave that runs along the west side, and then Torrance is further over on the east, but it's a pretty unique site, and it's a little tricky to get to, as Edward mentioned, but if you plug it into your GPS, it should get you there. It's worth noting that if you're coming from the north, if you get off the highway and go around Doty and then down South Stony, there is a parking lot on the north side with a sign. Usually those gates are locked because we're still doing a lot of remediation on the north side. So typically if it's your first visit, what I would suggest that you probably do is go ahead down South Stony and get to the south side, the south entrance, and there's a large parking lot there. So currently, this is just going from that drone image into a little bit more illustrative map. Most of the access and activity at Big Marsh is on the southern side, the southern third section of the site. This is the location of the bike park, as well as the Ford Calumet Environmental Center. The bike park itself is about 40 acres, 40 to 50 acres, and it's been capped with several feet of clay. So as we wait for the center to open, there is a water fountain here. So if you bring your water bottle, but unfortunately, because it's COVID, water fountains at Chicago Park District sites are not working. So bring water, I guess, is the point there. There are picnic tables, there's porta potties, and there's also a large gravel parking lot. It's not the best gravel parking lot, but it's doable. And since this is a pretty small group, and you didn't hear it here, but there is a parking meter there, but I wouldn't worry about paying the parking meter. Nobody ever comes to check at this point. So don't sweat the parking meter. There are several, where's my cursor here. There are several mulch trails that will bring you along the edge of the marsh and take you out to Dearborn Point. And you can also follow those mulch trails down around to Mystery Woods, and they give you pretty good spots to look out across the marsh. On the right-hand side of the screen, Mars and the alkaline pond are for the most part largely unexplored by first-time visitors. They look a lot like the landscape there looks a lot like it did when the park district first took over the site. This whole side of the park, I think, is probably the section of the park that was most negatively impacted by the steelmaking industry, and it's largely covered by slag, which is a byproduct of the steelmaking industry. A lot of times it was poured out along the railroad tracks, and you can see the railroad tracks run right along here. And when it was poured out in a molten state, when it cools, it looks a lot like cement. And then you'll also see big chunks of slag that look a lot like moon rocks. The northern end of the site, Three Fingers Pond and Bessemer's Keep. Stephanie, I put Bessemer's Keep in there for you. Are still in a very active state of restoration. So for the most part, we don't see it. There is public access out there, but for the most part, people don't go out there. We're still hauling in pretty major, significant loads of clay and soil to cap the north side. So for the most part, it's best to stay out of there when the trucks are going in and out. The red line on this slide are future trails. So ultimately, hopefully within the next 2 years, there will be a multi-use trail that will circumnavigate the entire site and will give you access, will give you access across these two sections of open water. So if you're on the south side, you can pretty much stay in this section down here. If you're on the north side, you get this northern section. And then ultimately there's a water crossing here from the main marsh into Three Fingers Pond, and then also from Dearborn Point onto the north side. I included some more drone shots, but I think that those are probably more confusing than they are helpful. I am very happy to say that the Ford Calumet Environmental Center, which was designed by Valerio DeWalt Train, is very, very, very close to opening. Even though I've been saying that for the past 3 years since I was hired to open up the center, but we're like weeks away from opening. The new building is on track to receive LEED Silver certification for its green design and operational features that include the constructed wetland. So the constructed wetland, which is kind of tucked in back of the corner of the building here, will handle all of the black water and gray water that comes off of the building. The building has classroom and meeting space. There's staff offices. There's real bathrooms, not porta potties. There's a staff shower area. And if you happen to be out there and you fell in the marsh and you needed to rinse off, I'd be happy to let you use the shower. There's also a cycle-focused outfitter that's on the back, that's planned to go into the back side of the center here. And they'll offer things like, they'll carry bike-related tools, tubes, tires, equipment, rentals, and snacks, that kind of stuff. The center will host school groups, scout groups, and meetings, which is, it's really intended to act as this gateway to the southeast side and also the larger Calumet region. We also plan to promote eco-recreational activities like hiking and biking, or hiking and birding, and as well as more active activities like biking and paddling and climbing and camping and fishing. The building will also feature an educational exhibit, which is focused on the history, the culture, industry, the history of industry, and the local ecology. And I think especially for this group, it's important to note that birds and birding really do feature prominently in the building design. In the exhibit and in the programming, I snipped this slide out of our exhibit design, and it shows some of the features in content, which focus on, there's a special section that focuses on secretive marsh birds. We talk about birding as a form of eco recreation. We talk about the impact that restoration has on bird habitat. And we've been working with the Field Museum to acquire several taxidermied specimens. There's a great blue heron. We've been trying to get a black-crowned night heron, but I don't think that's going to work out. A marsh wren, possibly a gallinule, and there's a couple other birds. So it's it's actually a great location where we can actually talk about birding, whether you're a new birder, an old birder, a practice birder, and also to use that space for our partner organizations that we've worked very closely with, such as COS and Great Lakes Audubon, to host meetings and events. This is your space as much as it is our space. And I think that's really most of what I wanted to show you. This is another little close-up. This section on birds is titled A Beautiful Mosaic. And for me, I think that this is really what it's all about at Big Marsh. There's so many interesting bits and pieces, and there's so many different user groups that are interested in the site. And hopefully there'll be more in the future, but I hope you come in and check things out. And if the center's open, stop by and say hi. And that's me, although I think you can see me still.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. It's good to know that if anybody is just going way too hard on trying to get their bittern and ends up in the marsh, that there is a recourse other than smelling like a swamp monster in their car on their ride home. Additionally, yeah, if you've ever hit up Chicago Ornithological Listings, you know that we go to Big Marsh a lot. We're big fans of that park. We have several hikes and programs there a year. But it's very, very exciting with the new center opening up just soon, anytime soon, to be able to be taking advantage of that and continue to expand our programming down there. So thank you so much, Stephen. Really looking forward to it. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Walter now. I'm going to pull up his slides here. And at any time, I realized I forgot to do this introduction. If you have questions at any time, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will answer them as we go along here. One second. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see my screen and Walter's slides?
Yeah, okay.
Everybody see that? Cool.
It's still in presenter view.
Thank you, Edward. Yeah, and Edward, would you, well, actually, I'm such a dunce at this. I can probably, let me see if I can change this myself, but I don't know if I can. No, you better do it, Edward. Hello, Edward?
Hey there. Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Just say the word and I'll go ahead and switch.
I'll just give you the word. Yeah, okay. All right. So Big Marsh has a rich ornithological history, including providing nesting habitat for numerous marsh birds and other wetland birds. It's interesting that when Stephen just showed the iconic birds of Calumet slide, the word black-crowned night heron was highlighted, and well, what do you know? That's the first one I'm starting with. So, yeah, traditionally, historically, I should say, black-crowned night herons nested in large numbers at Big Marsh, and we're fortunate that there actually were records taken on this when it was happening. A woman, a biologist named Sue Elston, did black-crowned night heron nest surveys at Big Marsh for both the United States Army Corps and also for the U.S. EPA every year, basically every year between 1984 and 1993. And generally what they did is they would have about 6 people, 6 of her comrades would walk with her through the marsh in waders, and they would count nests on either side of them. So they would also take accurate notes on the numbers of eggs and young in the nest, or if they were empty. The number of nests that, again, this period, 1984 to 93, most often the number of nests ranged around 500 or 600 black-crowned night-heron nests, but the highest count that they had was in 1988, they counted 762 nests. 71 of those were empty. So at least the number of active nests, therefore, was closer to 690. Still, just a remarkable amount of birds. 1998 was the last year that black-crowned night herons nested at Big Marsh, and the reason, at least the obvious reason, is that because they were flooded out. The water drainage was blocked, I presume, by beavers, and the water level was so high that it was basically up to the Stony Island Avenue. It was probably 6 feet higher than it is now, and it was flirting with the tops of the reeds. The night herons would have no part of it, and they moved to other nearby wetlands, and the rest is history. You can advance, please, Edward.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Look at the black-crowned night heron nest with eggs.
Yeah, I'm not getting it. Is anyone getting it?
Can everybody see that image with this nest with eggs in it?
And your other screen, Edward. If we're looking at the PowerPoint, it's not in.
Oh, okay. All right, hold on. Let me try this again. Okay. All right, can people see the PowerPoint slideshow? Oh my gosh, why do I stink at this?
Still seeing just the PowerPoint application. Are you doing the view, the slideshow view?
I was.
It might be on another screen. I don't know.
I apologize, folks.
That's
Give me
okay.
1 second here. Okay, hold on. Let me see. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool.
Okay.
Sorry about
cool.
that.
Yeah.
So y'all see a nest with eggs in it, correct?
Yeah, it's a bigger
Cool.
picture too. I like big. Okay, so yeah, I did have an opportunity to actually walk into the Marsh in 1991 with waders, of course, and I did take some pictures. So here is a in the flesh, a black-crowned night heron nest with eggs, and you can move up to the next slide, please, if you can. Yeah, and here's the babies. Okay, same day. I will just tie this part up about the black-crowned night herons with just to mention that while Sue Elston was doing these night heron surveys, they also documented nests they found of other marsh birds, including pied-billed grebe, common gallinule, coots, marsh wrens, and yellow-headed blackbirds. Let's move to the next slide. So, yellow-headed blackbirds. So I mentioned that they nested there in the 80s and the early 1990s. They were a feature throughout the Calumet region at that time, and they basically were gone from Big Marsh by the end of the 90s, and there are many reasons for this, but that is will be the subject, I'm sure, of another program. It's a little involved. Eventually they departed the Calumet area, the Illinois Calumet area completely, and the last territorial male was at the Eggers Grove Forest Preserve in 2013, and since then they have not come back. Can we advance? Just to put in context, I'm happy to be able to show some photographs from the late Alfred Royce. This photo was taken at Calumet Cinder Flats in September 1958, and Calumet Cinder Flats is basically the current site of of Harborside Golf Course. So it is basically across Stony Island from Big Marsh, and it's this group of yellow-headed blackbirds. It's certainly reasonable to say that some of them may have come from Big Marsh, the nesting area there. So again, historically, Big Marsh has been a great area for nesting marsh birds, and we are trying our best to manage it for nesting marsh birds as well. We would love to bring yellow-headed blackbirds back someday. Not happening yet. It's difficult. The other bird I have to mention is black tern, which nested throughout the Calumet River and certainly nested at Big Marsh. Gone now, just basically gone. And last nesting at Big Marsh was 1986. Again, rich ornithological history. We have been able to keep some of the other species through management, like common gallinule, pie-billed green, marsh wren, least bittern. So it's not a lost cause. We're doing better all the time, and hopefully we'll bring back some of these birds. We can advance. Big Marsh has historically been a place also where rarities and vagrants had been found. 1 to 2 tricolored herons summered at Big Marsh most years throughout the 1980s. Most years I only saw 1, but I was lucky enough in August 1989, I actually did flush 2 together. Really awesome. By the 1990s, the tricoloreds stopped visiting Big Marsh, and I think you can kind of see this is a trend that was developing, that the earlier years, 80s and 90s, a lot of interesting birds were in the area, and they started to taper off, and of course the logical reason for that was the fact that the quality of the marsh was declining, becoming very degraded, especially with invasive species like Phragmites, reeds, carp, etc. So, moving along to the next. The tricolored herons stopped visiting in the 90s, but the 90s brought another rarity. On August 14th, 1993, Sue Freesia found a reddish egret at Lake Calumet, and this was the first confirmed state record. It turned out that it stayed till at least October 2nd, and throughout much of September, it was often found at Big Marsh, and really exciting bird, and haven't seen any of them there for a while. We can advance. This is another one of late Alfred Royce's slides. This again is the Calumet Cinder Flats. I don't have a lot of historical photos from Big Marsh, but this again is 1961, and this is the type of scene that you would expect to see at the Cinder Flats, migratory shorebirds. In this shot, there's 43 ruddy turnstones together, and last time I saw a group of ruddy turnstones this large was probably in 1968, something like that. You don't get them, and you certainly don't get them at Calumet in those kind of numbers anymore. But the point I'm trying to make is that historically and in recent years as well, as long as appropriate conditions are present, by which I mean very low water levels, Big Marsh can be a magnet for shorebirds. In the recent decade, the water level has been very high, so we have not seen a lot of shorebird habitat. But in the first decade of the 21st century, there were several drought years, and we had a lot of really good shorebird habitat. Going by the current eBird database, 31 shorebird species have been recorded at Big Marsh, so gives you an idea. Next slide will be my final slide. This is just evidence that when conditions are right, it still attracts shorebirds. My dating is off. It should be 2 May 2018. A drawdown was conducted, and during early May of 2018, lots of shorebirds showed up of many varieties, but this is just an illustration of that big flock of American golden plovers. And so, yes, I think the reason it's difficult to get any kind of low water in the areas because the drainage is into Lake Michigan, and Lake Michigan is at one of the highest levels in almost all-time high levels. So once Lake Michigan comes down, we can lower level in some of these areas, hopefully, and see lots and lots of shorebirds. And I'm gonna stop right there.
Awesome. Thank you, Walter. We have a couple of questions in here regarding the yellow-headed blackbirds, and in particular why they left. I don't know if Stephen or Walter, if you can kind of speak to that at all.
Well, I sure can. In a nutshell, okay, one of the problems that happens in a lot of the wetlands, and again, I don't want to drag this out, but the type of habitat conditions that yellow-headed blackbirds really require, it's called hemi-marsh. It's a type of marshland which is approximately one half open water and one half emergent vegetation with a lot of interspersion and a lot of edge habitat. And when things like drought happen or flood, and plus the invasive species entering the area, all of this degenerates the area and ruins the capacity of it to create a hemimarsh. You often end up either with a monoculture without openings, or you end up with an open lake without a lot of vegetation, and none of this is appropriate for yellow-headed blackbirds and many of the marsh birds. And what happened is, over a series of decades, we had multiple instances of this, and just the hemimarsh habitat was basically lost, and the yellow-headed blackbirds responded by just simply, they couldn't hang on to it, they just stopped nesting. And again, I think that there is hope. If right now we are managing for hemimarsh, and that could bring them back conceivably. We're at the edge of the range, so it won't be an easy thing, but it is certainly a possibility. Hope that answers it.
Yeah, and also in the same question, again, if either you guys can speak to that, the ongoing work of the park, habitat restoration or environmental remediation, or both?
Yeah, I would say that it's a little bit of both. In terms of remediation, I think the technique that we've been using at Big Marsh is to actually go in and cap the areas that are highly polluted, that still have toxins in them, when that's called for. So that's been the first step, and then on top of that cap, we're working on restoration. So I think that we're doing some shoreline restoration. We're definitely working on the savanna. We're working on the prairie. So it's a combination, I guess, is the short answer.
Awesome. Was the reddish egret a one-time occurrence?
Well, it was a one-time occurrence, but the bird stayed for basically month and a half, I guess. Yeah, and again, I can't emphasize too much how important lowering water levels is for some of these wetland bird species. And the reason I mentioned that in regard to reddish egret is because what attracted that bird was the fact that this is when Harborside Golf Course was being constructed, and the way that they were constructing it was by dredging clay off the bottom of Lake Calumet and then depositing it to cap off the hills of Harborside Golf Course. The way that they were able to access the clay at Lake Calumet was by doing a complete drawdown. So you had just very shallow water for the whole south end of Lake Calumet, and that brought in not only reddish egret but plenty of great egrets and other herons and shorebirds as well. My high count all time of semi-palmated sandpipers was that month at Lake Calumet as well. It was over close to 300, and so yeah, that's again, this is management. It was inadvertently they were managing for birds. They were really just trying to scrape mud off the bottom and clay off the bottom. But boy, what a boon for the birds. And so yeah, I mean, again, management it's such a huge part of all this, and you have to think in those terms.
Awesome. I know we have some other questions here, but we'll get to those. I'm going to pass it over to Ben, who has got some fantastic visuals to share with us here about some current day birding.
Okay, hi everybody. So just to preface, I am not an expert at all, but Big Marsh is a place that I really enjoy quite a bit. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing, just a little bit of what I've seen, and then, sorry, I'm just trying to share this. Maybe some recommendations on some good routes to take if you're planning on visiting, or routes I like taking. Okay. There we go. So can everyone see my screens now, or my screen? Okay, cool. So I just took that, ooh, there we go. So I just took that same map that we were looking at before, and I kind of just pointed out a couple hot spots where I like to stop and look. And again, most of them are on the south side. The north side, I do mostly along the road. Check a lot for raptors during different times of the year. Winter, that can be a really good place to see them. And some of the habitat here can be good for sparrows, snipe, some other things like that. But again, I don't really hike too much in this area yet, but I'm really looking forward to that in the future. So what I normally do is kind of scan as I'm driving in, get a sense of what's on the water, and then I usually park in this southern lot down here. And the first thing I do is scan actually the tree line along the parking lot, and this tree line right here, especially during migration, that can be a great place to see warblers. Just the edge habitat is seems to be a good way just to get visuals on things that are a little tougher sometimes. And so the way I broke this down was just kind of like spring, summer. And a lot of these spring birds would also apply in fall migration too. But again, higher water levels. So I think last April, there were a group of pelicans that hung around for a few weeks. They were really fun to watch. Typical warblers for the area are usually around. And again, I think both of these pictures were along this fence line, or the fence line in the parking lot, actually. In terms of then marsh birds like the rails and soras, for those, and for the pelicans, really walking along this path along the water, that path has pretty great views of the marsh. A scope is really helpful for that, but most of the time I'm just using binoculars to spot things out there, and you can still see quite a bit. And especially right along the edges here, that could be, depending on the day, a great place to get a closer look at some of the secretive birds like sora or Virginia rails. Every time is different, but it's one of the most reliable places I've ever found to look and see those birds. And then that's it. Another great spot is, so there's like the concrete kind of slab area right at this number 3. And that's another great place to stop for a while, sit down, kind of scope things out with the binoculars. And along here, I should mention too, 2 and 3, least bittern is also possible here depending on the day, over the summer for sure. And then winter, again, that higher water level. So since I've been birding there, because the water level has been higher, there've been a lot of, so waterfowl is typically what I find in the winter. So gadwall, pintail. Last winter, the tundra swans, I think all 3 swans were there at one point for a few days in a row. And then we have cardinals, tree sparrow, things like that. And then, sorry, I keep blocking my own controls here. And then the other thing I always look for, really all the time, it's been a great place to see eagles, hawks, and falcons for me. So peregrine, I don't have pictures of kestrels here, but they're often there, and in the eastern area, especially behind the Mystery Woods. That area, I don't typically see too many people back there, and some of those open spaces back there can be great for Cooper's hawk, harrier, too. And then, of course, the bald eagles and rough-legged hawks too, at the right time of year. So, oops, sorry. Back on this map. So this is that back area I was talking about. If you keep going along the trail, you can kind of walk along this back trail, still staying on this southern, so like the southeastern side, and that's pretty underbirded, I would say. Like, I don't see a lot of people going back there when I'm there. And then last thing, I really love it. Of course, I usually focus on birds, but there's so much else to see too. So beaver and muskrat, muskrat especially, like I've really enjoyed watching them at Big Marsh. They're in that same area along like 2 and 3 where the rails and soar I typically look for. So Decay's brown snake, and then deer, even in that degraded habitat in back, like a little bit. I see them there quite a bit as well. So yeah, that it's a place I really love, and I enjoy exploring it. Every time I go, I see something new, I feel like. So yeah, that's all I have. And again, I'm not by no means an expert, so just wanted to share some of my experiences there.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fantastic spots that are. Once you get off just to the main trails, even by the center, there's a lot of fantastic birding still to be done. And I want to say it was maybe 2-3 years ago, where there was just that rush of rough-legged hawks, where there was like 12 of them all hanging out there by the landfill in Big Marsh. Incredible year. All right.
Yeah, I
So
was looking. That was 2016.
okay.
I was actually looking at that, and yeah, I think the high count was 16 or 17 rough-legged hawks, and they would just perch out, on power line and top of power poles and everything. I was looking for a photo here I could share, and give me 1 second here just to give people an idea as to how. There we go. Just how cooperative these rough-legged hawks were. Sorry, that was yeah, end of 2016, 2017, and really they were focused on the landfill just to the south here, because that's a great place when you are at Big Marsh, especially later in the day when you start to get some heat and air rising. You'll get raptors just soaring and hovering over the landfills there, and you'll get yeah, like I said, just rough-legged hawks. Occasionally in the winter, you don't usually get that kind of number, but that's a great place at any time of year to always scan for raptors. I think yesterday we had red tails and kestrels over there and stuff. So yeah, that's a great place to look. And then in the wintertime, when you get to February and March, great place to look for gulls as well. It gets a little distant to pick out the good gulls, but still the numbers there, hundreds and hundreds of gulls.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic kind of emphasis point too, on the fact that, I mean, this is definitely a year-round birding destination. I mean, I don't think there's any point that's not a good time to be there to be looking for something. It's fantastic pretty much every time of the year. Stephanie, do you have a presentation or some photos to share with us?
I do, yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm next.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, 1 minute. Share. All right, can you see my slide? Yes, okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna be talking about our, I'm gonna be talking about the Calumet Marsh Bird Survey and our MAPS bird banding station at Big Marsh. So I've got 2 different hats that I'm wearing, my Audubon Great Lakes hat and COS. So I'm the Conservation Science Manager at Audubon Great Lakes, And part of my job there is overseeing a Calumet marsh bird survey that includes Big Marsh. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my route there. And first I want to mention my first ever visit to Big Marsh was in 2016. And it was just kind of by accident that I ended up there in March of 2016. I heard about a work day and showed up. And when I first got there, I just felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. It just looked so odd, and the park hadn't officially opened. There were no signs or anything. So I had a great time though, and I had no idea that I'd be spending so much time there. So first I'm going to talk about the Calumet Marsh Bird Survey. And so this is just a picture right at dawn, basically at sunrise, at one of my marsh bird survey points at Big Marsh. So that's our view there, and there's a photo of a common gallinule with food in its beak, carrying food for its young. But basically, for our Calumet Marsh Bird Survey, we set up a series of points across a wetland, and we have multiple wetlands that we're surveying in order to see how marsh birds are responding to restoration and management. And so this is just an overview of where my survey points are, and we visit these points 3 times in the spring, and we conduct a playback for secretive birds, and then we also keep track of all 17 different species that we're focusing on. So there's another photo from one of my points. I think that's probably point number 4. This viewpoint right here is right around here, looking out. So these are the 17 marsh bird species that we focus on. And so there's a few on here that, we don't typically get as many of, but several others are pretty common. The ones that we've never had on a marsh bird survey include, I think the only one that we've never had on a survey is black tern. Yellow crowned night heron and king rail snowy egret are pretty rare, especially because their range is typical, and little blue heron, their range is a little bit further south. Yellow-headed blackbird and American bittern, we also get very few of those, but the other ones are fairly common at our sites. One of the things that we've been able to do with these surveys is tracking progress over time. And so we actually started surveying in 2015 at Big Marsh. And the bar graph is showing the number of species that we counted from 2015 to 2020. And then the map is showing the difference in the amount of vegetation and the change in water level after the Chicago Park District did a huge restoration effort where they lowered the water level and burned Phragmites, and which is an invasive species of grass. And after they did that, we got kind of a flush of new growth of a lot of cattail. Some of the Phragmites a lot of the Phragmites is still there, but you can really see the difference between 2015 and 2017, how much more habitat is available. And they're continuing to restore the site. It's kind of a never-ending battle against the invasive species, but so far we've seen incredible rebound of birds that have come back. So in 2015 and 2016, you can see we maxed out at 2 species. I believe it was black-crowned night heron and marsh wren. And then after they did the herbicide and burn and the water levels were lowered, in 2017, we jumped up to 8 species, maxed out at 11. And last 2 years, we had 9 species of marsh birds. And these are our common breeders at the bottom: common gallinule, swamp sparrow, Virginia rail, sora, marsh wren, and least bittern. This year I saw sora with a couple of chicks following it. And then least bitterns, we were hearing all over the marsh, kind of in this area, and also had some down here. And they were very noisy over the summer, which leads me to believe that they likely had chicks as well. All right, so that's my quick overview of the marsh bird monitoring. I definitely have a longer spiel that I could go into, but that'll be saved for another talk. So I'm going to jump right into our not marsh birds, our bird banding station that we started this year. Looking at Stephen's map, I probably should have called this Maps on Mars, because MAPS is the name of the protocol. It's an acronym for Monitoring Avian Productivity and Survivorship, which is the protocol that we use when banding birds. And pretty much all of our nets that we use for catching birds are on the part of the park that's kind of known as Mars, because it's where a lot of slag dumping activity took place. And you can see that it has this kind of reddish color. There's a lot of shrubby cover in this area as well. We found out when we were setting up our nets that it was pretty hard to put stakes in the ground because of the slag. Made it pretty tough to pound things into the ground. But basically, for the process of banding, we put up mist nets. So this is not at Big Marsh, but this is a better picture that I had of what a mist net looks like. Basically, it's this fine mesh that you string across between two poles, and the birds don't really see it because it's fairly fine. And then they fly in. And then when they hit the net, it has this little pocket here so that they kind of drop down into a pocket. The net stretches out so that it kind of like catches them, and it's not, super taut. But then they fall into a little pocket. We go and check our mist nets every half hour to see if any birds are in them. And we do this for the MAPS protocol. We're doing it once about every 10 days or so, just during the summer. And what we're doing is we're keeping an eye on what birds are breeding at the site. So it's a special protocol that looks at, what birds are present, what age are they, what is the sex. We take a lot of detailed notes looking at molt as well, and that can give us some ideas of, what stage of development or what stage of molt or what age the bird is potentially. So you can see with this robin here, it's got some feathers growing in. So it's replacing its wing feathers. These ones over here look really ratty. So it's about to replace these as well. So when birds are molting, songbirds tend to replace the inner feathers first, and then they work their way this way and this way. And these are the primaries and the secondaries. You can see all the data that we're collecting on the sheet there. And all of this information helps us understand, how productive birds are, how many young they're producing. If we catch young birds that were born this year on site, we can get some information on that. And then we can also, since we band year after year, we can learn a little bit more about how long these birds live. And, it might be different site to site. And since we're part of this larger protocol, there's people doing this type of banding across the continent. And so we can compare our data to somewhere else. And this is a really unique site where we're on in part of an industrial landscape. So we really can find out more about, if these birds are inhabiting this area where there's a lot of slag and past contamination, how long are they living? Are they thriving? Are they doing well compared to other sites? So just doing a quick picture time. So these are some of the birds that we banded this year. Yellow warbler was our second most common species that we caught. This is a female shown here. We've got a lot of indigo buntings, and this one was molting. As you can see, it's getting more of the blue feathers in. It's a male. An American redstart, we only caught one, so we think that they breed on site, but it could also be an early migrant. Baltimore oriole was only a single bird that we caught, but definitely worth a photo op. And then common yellowthroat, song-sparrow, blue-gray gnatcatcher, eastern kingbird. And here's our totals that we caught over the summer. Gray catbird was the winner with 44 individuals that we caught. Of course, after when we catch them, we put a band on their leg with an individual number. So if we ever catch it again, we know where it came from, and then we have all the details and notes on what we determined for the age and sex originally. So hopefully we'll go back next year and catch some of these guys again, because they'll return to their breeding grounds where they nested this year. So in total, we banded 200 individuals of 20 species. And just want to shout out to our banding crew. Anastasia Rollin and Libby Keys helped me out this year. We operated kind of in a unique way due to COVID. So we all had kind of 2 to 3 nets that we operated separately, so that we, weren't touching all the same equipment at the same time. So if you want to learn more, check out our website, Audubon Great Lakes, gl.audubon.org, and shoot me an email if you want to learn more about our marsh bird monitoring program. And then Chicago Ornithological Society has more information on our banding station. Will be posted on the blog. If you want to learn more about what MAPS is, the Monitoring Avian Productivity Protocol, just go over to birdpop.org. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Stephanie. And this is basically your reminder here that if you go to Big Marsh, you will definitely get catbirds. So if you're looking at for a year bird, you will definitely get catbirds at Big Marsh. So great reason to come on down. And just in general, thank you, Stephanie, also for pulling this banding station off in the middle of a pandemic. It was very unclear whether it was even going to happen or not. So it was really exciting to finally see that all come together. So at this point, if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and slap them in the chat there and see if we can answer them. I know one of the questions we got here, I'll ask because it was sent to me privately in accident. Has anybody got any owls there before?
So here, I'm going to go ahead, because I know you, Edward, you were holding owl prowls there, weren't you, trying to?
Well, I am something of an owl aficionado. I do lead them around town, but I've never gone to Big Marsh for owl hikes before. I don't know what the situation there is.
So hopefully you can see my screen here. And back when the restoration work was going on, and Stephen, cover your ears here, I used to sneak onto some of the areas of the park that were not necessarily open to the public, just because one of my kind of favorite places, I like to go birding in places that not a lot of people are going. So I'd sneak around to the kind of the north side of the park here, really before they did a lot of Phragmites clearing. And if you talk to Stephen or like Laura Umek, who was a project manager with the park district, did a lot of restoration work here. This particular area here, they've done a lot of clearing of low quality trees and stuff, but it used to be fairly heavily wooded. And I came around to this side, and I'd have to find the day, but it was in April, I believe, and there were 2 great horned owls in these trees here. I went back a few weeks later, was not able to relocate them, so I don't know if they actually tried to breed in this area. Great horned owls obviously breed in a variety of places, but those are the only owls I think I've ever had in Big Marsh. I don't know if Walter, maybe Walter's had a snowy owl here or something like that sometime, but that's
Carl, no such luck, but no, I hear you on great horned owl, because there definitely was a great horned owl on a nest, and again, I didn't research it, but in the 90s, I think, and it was again in the cottonwoods at the north end of off Stony Island, which of course no longer exists. So, and again, this is part of the restoration that is being done, and it's understandable. And they're aiming for a savanna type habitat, and that's fine. But great horned owls will exploit suitable habitat if and when they find it, and there is a lot of that type of habitat elsewhere in the Calumet region, Hegwish Marsh, and other areas, and some Bobian Woods. So they nest sporadically throughout the area, but they have, and Lake Calumet also, but they have nested at Big Marsh, and probably not enough trees at this time, but who knows what the future will bring.
So no short-eared owls on Mars.
Nah.
Darn.
Edward, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to hijack the screen just one more time because I want to share. I'll share this link in the chat here. But for those folks that are interested in a really detailed history of, and I don't know, Walter, if you can see my screen, but there's an
Yeah.
update to this document. But
Yeah, there's no updates really, but basically Stephanie and I are creating the updates as we go along, I guess, because we're trying to bring back all these, endangered and marsh birds. Yeah.
So this document here that I threw in the chat is a really fascinating document, written by two giants of Chicago area bird conservation, and Judy Pollock and our very own Walter Marzich there. So if you want to kind of get a really detailed history on the breeding birds of the Calumet area, it really is a fascinating read.
Yeah, for sure. I got a couple questions directed at you, Stephanie. Specifically, how do you gauge the age of a bird, and what was that sparrow you were holding?
Oh yeah, that's a fun one. I could go into so much more detail if we had more time on aging. So actually, I have a book right here. I don't know why. Well, I was using it, so I just happened to keep it right next to me. There's a whole guidebook basically to how to age birds, and this is only songbirds in North America, so it's pretty thick. And basically, what we look for is molt. And so young birds tend to grow their feathers really quickly, and they wear out more quickly than an adult bird because they're growing them all at once. They have to put all their energy into growing all those feathers. And so you can look to see the quality of the feather, and if it's a feather that's really worn next to a feather that's grown in more recently, that can tell us something about, that bird is retaining its juvenile feathers, and it's getting new feathers that look like an adult, a higher quality feather in next to it, then that bird was likely born last year, something like that. But it all depends on what time of year, and being able to, figure out, all the birds start molting in the summer. So in the fall, all the birds that kind of look like they were born last year are actually birds that were born this year. And then so we can only tell, when we age it, it's like we can know if it was born this year or if it was born last year, but it gets a little more complicated aging it more than that. But with banding, of course, if you catch a bird number of years in a row, like a bird that I banded at Horicon Marsh during a banding demo, we aged it as an after second year, meaning it was born at least 2 years ago, and then it was caught about 5 years later. So we know it was at least 7 years old. So that's another way.
Nice.
The bird at the last slide, I forgot to put a caption in there. That was a juvenile field sparrow. So that was cool to see. We've been hearing field sparrows singing all summer, but we don't know if they're breeding unless we actually see the juveniles there. So it had all that streaking on it. Kind of a goofy looking, got its baby plumage on. So yeah, that's that.
Nice. Yeah. Here's hoping we can go long enough where we can start finding, birds that are returning year after year, 7-year-old field sparrows, maybe. Fingers crossed, right? I don't know if they live that long. But yeah,
Maybe.
Got a question here. Is Calumet Harbor still actively receiving cargo ships? I know the general answer, but I don't know if any of our experts here have a more specific answer.
Did you say Cargill? Is that what
Yes,
you're asking?
Correct.
I know where Cargill is. It's 117th and Torrance. I don't know, but I would assume so. But I don't know for a fact.
Yeah, I know the Illinois Port Authority, you hear every couple of years in the news there's an article that it's bankrupt again. So I don't know. I don't know to what extent it's really operating. There's the one large cargo ship there that's seemingly permanently docked and rusting away there. But I don't see too many barges going by on the, I think maybe I have like in the Little Calumet River, closer to like Hedgewish Marsh. There's a lock and dams that's certainly, you know, used by both cargo boats and recreational boats. So I guess it probably has to be.
I actually happen to know that the northern half of Lake Calumet itself actually isn't capable of receiving ships right now. It hasn't been dredge maintained by the Army Corps in a very long time, so it currently is. It's physically not capable to hold large cargo ships. It's just simply too shallow. The southern half technically is able to, but I have no idea of what degree of traffic it gets in the current day.
Yeah.
Are there any boardwalks at Brigmarsh? Stephen, that's all you.
Nope, not yet. There's one of the projects that Dr. Lauren Umek is leading over the course of the next 2 years. There'll be a boardwalk that links the north side to the south side, and there'll be a little connection between on that map that we were looking at earlier between the end of Marsh and Three Fingers Pond. It would be great to get some boardwalks out there, but nothing in the near future except for that smaller one that links the two sides.
Any other questions in the chat? We did get a question about bats, and I think Stephen, you might be able to answer this too. But I know definitely for sure we do get bats there.
Yeah, I've seen I haven't seen any this year, but I haven't been there as late as I was there last year. But last year, at dusk, there were oftentimes quite a few bats flying around. Yeah.
Walter, we had one yesterday, didn't we?
Oh.
Actually, Carl, after rethinking that, I'm pretty sure I misidentified a chimney swift as a bat. So, but on the other hand, I'm sure that they do inhabit that area. But I don't think I saw it.
Womp womp. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. So I think we'll go ahead and close things out here. So thank you all so much for joining us here tonight. This is really fantastic. I mean, I learned a lot about Big Marsh a lot here, and I hope everybody else did here too. Thank you so much to our speakers here who took the time to share their knowledge and expertise. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you would like to, obviously go to Big Marsh, we highly encourage it. And actually, we do have an event coming up. We are going to be doing a big sit on October 17th. That's a Saturday, pretty much an all morning and day affair. So definitely be on the lookout for more details about that event on the Chicago Ornithological Society website and the Chicago Park District website very soon, as soon as we hammer out all the last details. So mark your calendars, October 17th. You can join several of us out there and all of our experts on what makes Big Marsh awesome. And without further ado, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. And have a great rest of your weekend here and great week. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks.